What separates a good anime from a great anime? Why do some animes stick with us long after we've watched it? Welcome to the workshop.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Chris.
We're two friends from high school and now aspiring writers, and in this podcast, we discuss and deconstruct storytelling elements in some of our favorite animes. Em and Chris watching another rom-com? Is this another review of Ouran High School Host Club? Nope. Today in the workshop, we will be looking at one of the more recent breakthroughs in romantic comedy anime, Kaguya-sama Love is War. Now, we know that the second season for this show already came out this spring, but today we're only going to be covering season 1 of this show, which was adapted by A1 Pictures and aired last year in 2019.
So, Kaguya-sama Love is War follows Miyuki and Kaguya, the student council president and vice president, respectively, of the prestigious Shuchin Academy. On the surface, they are admired by their peers and seem like a perfect pair. Kaguya comes from a super rich conglomerate family, and Miyuki is a determined and driven top-performing student. They both harbor feelings for one another, but feelings, love that. But each being too prideful and stubborn, neither wants to confess first. The show follows Kaguya and Miyuki as they plot elaborate schemes to try and get the other person to confess their feelings.
Ooh, so spicy.
So spicy. It's literally about high school students. It's not that spicy.
Here we are once again with a rom-com lovey-dovey show, even though the last time we did it we were like, oh my gosh, never again, and never again. Right back here we are with our dumb antics.
We're back at it, guys. But okay, so we're gonna go to our overall impressions, and I really enjoyed this show. Like, spoiler alert, I really enjoyed it. We really enjoyed it. And I mean, like you said, we just don't, I mean, I don't really watch romance that often, or even slice of life. Like, I don't really watch it, but this was so much fun to watch. Like, I was actually surprised at how much I liked it. Like, I don't know if you felt that too, but I was like audibly laughing while watching this show.
Okay, like, when I watched the first 2 episodes, I sent a Snapchat to Chris with a caption being like, this show is so cringy, but I can't stop smiling.
Yeah, like, you know when a show is like a comedy, but then you're like, you just laugh internally when you watch it? Like, it's like, oh, this is funny, but I'm not actually
This is like laugh out loud.
This is like actually like, I was kind of dying. But anyways, I just, I thought it was so, I think it's such a refreshing contribution to like the rom-com high school genre, in that it takes cliches and tropes that any viewer, I think, could probably recognize from other rom-coms, right? But then it deconstructs those tropes in a way that is so self-aware and taken to like comedic extremes. And the reason that works so well for the show is because it follows this like skit-like format that's I guess reminiscent of like a sketch comedy. And I think
that's interesting.
And I think that narrative choice works well for the style and the tone that the show is trying to achieve. Because I think if you think of any sketch comedy shows like SNL or whatever, the format is really to take a joke or a concept or something, and in this case a romantic cliche, and just escalate it in really funny and clever ways, and often absurd ways. And I think that's where the show excels, in the way that it exposes and captures the absurdity of like being in love, or I guess like having a crush and navigating emotions when you're a teenager. So I like that the show purposely takes itself super seriously for comedic effect, but it also shows that, like, I feel like that's purposeful because it shows that teenagers take themselves so seriously.
Oh yeah, that's
like,
true.
Like everything when you're at that age really does feel like life and death. It really does feel like war. And I think the show is able to capture that feeling in a really entertaining way. And because of that, I feel like the writing does this really difficult but beautiful thing wherein like it's intentional absurdity. It's also able to create these genuinely relatable and resonant moments. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just really able to relate to these characters so much. And the way that they
Yeah.
overthink every little thing and create these super elaborate scenarios in their head of what they want to happen, but
Mm-hmm.
it never actually happens because they're too freaking scared to act on their feelings. So, oh, I could see myself in these characters in like the worst way. But I feel like that's what successfully makes it stand out from other shows in its genre. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh my gosh, I completely agree. This is just a super cute story about how love can basically turn geniuses into absolute idiots, and it's presented in such a
yeah.
way that is so like lighthearted, it's so enjoyably like entertaining. I think it's a show very much marked by like a duality almost, because there are moments that make
Mhm.
you cringe so hard but for some reason you can't help but smile and laugh, and then
Yeah.
also it's like you realize that the traits that really bring the two characters together or that make them compatible with each other are also the same ones that kind of like throw a wrench into their relationship. You know,
Right.
they're both very highly intelligent and resourceful, but because of that same thing, they
Mhm.
are so prideful and they can't be together and they're so stubborn about it.
Yeah.
And then because you realize that they make it so difficult for themselves, like they make it so frustrating that when they do get really, really nice moments together, it
Mhm,
really makes you want
mhm.
to root for them. Like by the end of
Yeah.
the
Oh my
series,
god,
I was
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, she hopped onto the back of his bicycle.
Yeah.
Yes! Like finally, I'm so happy for
Mhm.
you. So that was really, really nice because I
Mhm.
think it's really hard to take a genre that is known
Right.
for being cliche and cringeworthy, and you know,
Mhm.
there's so much opportunity for failure, and make it so that your viewers and audience root for your characters. Like honestly, I
Right.
think that's the number one priority most of the time
For
is,
a romance, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
for your audience to feel like they want your characters to be together, which is
Right.
great.
Yeah.
And you know, the writer does a really great job of that. I love this whole idea of love being like a quote unquote war, um,
Yeah.
of like wits and intellect. These two people who are so entrenched in their own form of like psychological warfare.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you remember, but I think it was in the Fire Force episode, and I was
Mhm.
like, oh, you know, the type of battle that I love the most are like
Yes,
intellectual
yeah.
battles.
Yeah.
And I was complaining the whole time because I was
Yeah,
like,
you're like, "I need big brain, galaxy
I need,
brain battles." Yeah.
I need big brain
Yeah.
battles. And I feel like I got that from
From the
this show.
show, yeah.
Like I kind of got that feeling from watching
Mhm.
Kaguya scheme and like
Maybe that's why I
prep.
liked it, because maybe it's low-key a shonen, like, because of their big brain, galaxy brain battles.
You're so right. Like taking that, I didn't get that feeling from
Mhm.
a shonen battle scene, but I
Yeah,
got that
yeah.
from this like rom-com shoujo. Like I don't know, I
Yeah.
just thought it was so funny.
Mhm.
Um so yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was really funny,
Yeah.
enjoyable, lighthearted, but also meaningful, I think. I think it does say
Mhm.
some meaningful things
Yeah.
about, you know, youth and romance.
One thing that I did like about this romance in particular was that it's a little bit different in that we're already at a by the time the show starts, we're already at a point where they already have feelings for each other.
Mhm.
And I find that most romance stories are focused on like, them meeting and the feelings that they go through realizing that they have feelings for each other. But this
Mhm.
show is just like we're past that. We're past that. They have feelings for each
Yeah.
other. In real life, sometimes you just get a crush. Like you just get it
It
already,
just
right? Like it
happens.
just happens. And like usually a lot of the stuff that goes through your mind is like how do I get this person to talk to me and stuff like that. So I like that they just kind of streamlined that in this show, and
Mhm.
we're already past that
We're kind
rom-com.
of like dropped into the middle of the action and the drama as soon as we get here.
Yeah.
Because and I know that we're not talking about, you know, any specific characters just yet, but it's
Mhm.
interesting to note that we hear stories about how Kaguya, like what she was like when she first entered school, and the
Right.
Kaguya that we meet is very different than what she was like. So we're very
Right.
much
Yeah.
dropped into like the middle of her character development as well. So
Right.
it
Yeah.
feels less like there's a learning curve of sorts, I guess, that we have to overcome in terms
Mhm,
of plot
mhm.
and character. We can just kind of be like, like we're dropped into the middle of it and we can just enjoy the war, the
Yeah, and
battle.
I think it's interesting that I don't wanna say that the show isn't focused on character writing,
Mm,
but what I mean by that more is, like, they give you just enough writing for each character that you kind of know who they are.
for
So,
sure.
like, we know that Kaguya is this, like, rich girl who's very, sort of on the surface, she's kinda cold, but she's also very, like, low-key kind-hearted and, like, cares about people and is very
Mm-hmm.
innocent and, like, naive about things and lives a very sheltered life. A very common rich girl thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for Miyuki, he's like a peasant kid at a very prestigious, like, school, like, classic rich, poor dynamic type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Who like and his redeeming quality is that he works very, very hard. Those are just, like, such common cliche
Yeah,
character
for
dynamics,
sure.
but it's kind of like these characters are a stand-in for the audience. Like,
Yeah.
they're not supposed to be these, like, elaborate, like,
An
they go on
emotional
these el
stand-in.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm not
Mhm.
filthy rich and I'm not super smart,
Yeah,
but
no,
you know,
yeah, of
an
course not,
emotional
no.
stand.
But an emotional stand-in, like,
Yes.
they're just there they have just enough character writing
Yes.
that they feel like real people, but they're mostly there so that the audience can just relate to them through the dumb stuff that they do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that really fits, sort of the tone of the show, that they're not trying to, like, make these super elaborate characters or anything.
Mm-hmm. That whole thing about like our characters being so hyperbolic in
Yes. Yeah.
their status and wealth and intellect. I think
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
kind of like necessary to the
Mm,
storyline and to the story that the writer is trying to tell because it
right.
shows that like these are the types of problems that the wealthy and the comfortable have. Like if you're
Yeah,
like trying
yeah.
to feed your family day by day,
Mhm,
like I don't think you
mhm.
would be so focused on some of the problems that they have,
Right,
right?
yeah, that's
And
a
then
good point.
also, yeah, and then also I
Mhm,
actually have this line that I found on Wikipedia about the show that I thought
mhm,
was interesting, about how the writer Akasaka
mhm,
writes the story. So it says, in developing a chapter or story, Akasaka would think about emotions first and then write about
mhm,
experiencing the emotions, such
mhm,
as what Kaguya would feel if she were jealous. He would
mm,
then arrange the characters and events around that emotion.
right.
That
Yeah,
really makes sense,
yeah,
especially when we talk about how he doesn't revolve his writing around the characters, he more so revolves them around particular emotions or particular
yes, yeah,
scenarios, which is why the skit or sketch, you know,
mhm,
formula and format really lends itself to that.
yeah. That's actually that makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
and, like, I kind of think that, that approach just works so well for this show because
Mhm.
by putting the emotion at the center of it, it's like those feelings are, like, universal, right?
Mhm.
So, you can really arrange any characters around any given, emotion if that's your starting point.
Mhm.
I think another, like, point that I really liked is that, the show has like, it uses a narrator, which
I was
is
just about to
so
bring that up.
it's
That was
so
my
freaking
next
funny to
point.
me. I love the narrator. Like, if anyone has watched, like, Mob Psycho, like, it's very much in the same vein as
That's so
that.
true. I didn't even
Like, he
think of
even
that.
sounds like the Mob Psycho guy. I wonder
Yeah.
if it's the
Oh, I
same
wonder if
narrator.
it's the same
Yeah, we should have
guy.
looked that up, but
I know.
yeah, so just, like, in the similar vein of, like, there's literally a narrator, like, like, narrating the actions of the characters, and I think that, aside from his comments just being hilarious, like, it adds to the very, like, absurdist tone that the show is going for,
Mhm.
and I think it almost creates this, that feeling of, like, I'm the main character of my story type vibe, which I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
is
yeah.
actually a great representation of how your life feels like when you're a teenager. Like, I
Mhm.
just felt like the narrator often comes in and really elevates the comedy of the show by commenting on the ridiculous stuff that the characters are doing. The narrator basically is there to make fun of the characters.
There is legit this psychological thing that I learned about in child psychology. I am not
Mm.
a psychologist, but I did learn about this one concept. I don't remember what it's called, but we literally like teens literally will act like someone is watching them even if they're alone.
Mm.
So it's actually like a psychological thing that almost all teens go through.
Mm.
And also on that, like on a related note, it's kind of cute how this show like puts an effort to incorporate psychological things into
Yeah.
it. Like I
Yeah, it does.
remember there's this one scene of Hayasaka being like, "This is what the id is. This is what the super ego
Oh
is."
my
I was like,
I was like, "She's really bringing up Freud in my anime?
"My."
You really can't escape this man. Oh my god."
I was like, "This explanation is so wrong," but
It's like
okay.
literally it wasn't even the correct use of like the id and the superego, but whatever.
Yeah, it was just cute, but I appreciate the effort.
Yeah. I think that a lot of the driving force or the drama of the show comes from the characters' like internal monologues, you know?
Mhm,
Like the
mhm.
point of the show is sort of how much these characters are assuming things
Yeah.
and like imagining things and creating these ideal scenarios and worst case scenarios in their heads, and that's sort of like how each skit goes, is like back and forth between both of their heads.
Mhm.
You sort of see how much like how much people assume things when they don't
Yes.
talk, you know what I mean?
When they
Like
don't talk.
they're both such overthinkers, and they're both
Uh-huh.
stubborn, and they're both driven and determined to make any situation bend in their favor, but
Mhm.
they won't ever admit what they ever
Yes.
want in any given situation.
Oh
So
my
they
gosh,
always have to like they're
relatable.
always extrapolating what the other person is feeling, and it's like more often than not, like 90% of the time, what they assume the other person is thinking or whatever
Mhm.
is like just incorrect.
Yes. Yes.
And it's just like, oh my god, like I've never seen a depiction of teenagers more accurate than this show. And
Uh-huh.
it's literally so dumb, but it
Yeah,
I don't know, it's so great.
it's so like centered around that whole like idea of miscommunication within
Yeah,
relationships, but also like during the period of time when like leading up to when two people actually start to date. That
right.
feeling
Yes,
of
yeah.
that feeling of spending so much time, energy, effort into like thinking of what you're gonna say or
Oh
like
my god,
text to
yeah.
someone, and then all you get back is like, okay.
And you're like, "They freaking hate
They
me."
hate me. Or like that feeling of on the other side, flipping it around,
Mhm.
wanting to say so much more than what you said, but not
Right.
really finding the opportunity or the right situation to do that. And then you
Yeah.
kind of worry like, oh, did I sound too distant? Do I sound too aloof? It's like, stop
Yeah.
overthinking things.
I don't exactly remember which scene it was, but there are like certain scenes where the characters like Miyuki and Kaguya will be giving advice on something,
Oh yeah.
and I think it's just funny, like, the way that, like especially in the scenes where, like, Miyuki is, like, giving advice or something, and, like, he literally has, like, never been in a relationship before.
So
There's,
cute.
like, some random student that, like, comes to him a couple times throughout the show for, like,
Hmm.
relationship advice, and he's just, like, sitting there acting like he knows what he's saying. And he's, like he has, like, all of this advice and, like, wisdom to give, but he's, like,
Yeah.
actually he's probably, like, less qualified to know anything about relationships than the person that he's talking to, and I was
Hmm.
like, "You know what? That's me."
Isn't
'Cause
that all of us?
like, do you ever feel like you're the advice friend?
Oh yeah.
Right? Like, I always feel like I'm in a situation where my friend comes to me and it's just like, honestly, like, my boyfriend right now, like, he literally just, like, the way that the punctuation of this text was just, like, really rubbing me the wrong way, and I just, like, don't know how to feel, and I'm just like,
The
"Oh my god."
semicolon that he added, it's like, is he finished the sentence or is he not? Like, I don't
Honestly.
know.
And sometimes I'm like, "Why am I the one answering these questions?" Like, I literally have no idea. I have no idea.
Okay, so there's this point where Hayasaka says this line. It's towards the end of the season, but she goes,
Mhm.
"If either were open about their feelings, they could both be happy. But I
Right.
envy them. I wish I loved someone like that."
Mm.
And I love this line. It shows that the writers just have so much awareness
Mm.
surrounding what teenage romance is all about, because
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that it's easy to look at teenage romance and kind of write it off as insignificant or absurd or an over exaggeration. But for them in that specific moment, that love is their whole world. And as a teenager,
Yeah.
that is like, that's a huge deal, you know? So I
Mhm.
love that it just shows that like these writers have so much respect, or the mangaka is just one writer,
Yeah.
has so much
Mhm.
respect for teenagers. Like, we
Yeah.
need more
Yeah.
respect for teenagers.
I agree. Mhm. I was honestly, like, kind of I mean, I didn't cry watching the show, but I did get very emotional towards the end where she's looking forward to hanging out with her friends and, like, making all these memories and stuff like that, and it's literally just the
Mm.
smallest thing, like, she just really wants to hang out with her friends. But then she's, like, not allowed to go because it's, like, too dangerous or something because of, like,
Hmm.
I don't know, I don't know, rich people things. And I think the way that this is portrayed and that it's so devastating for her, like, she
Yeah.
literally like, it literally, like, crushes her spirits and everything, and, like, it's literally portrayed to be, like, an absolutely
Hmm.
crushing, experience for her to not be allowed to just go hang out with her friends. And I think that that is honestly, like, I like the way that they lean into that to the drama of that because sometimes it can feel like life or death for us. Like, I remember having moments as a teenager too where I was, like, not allowed to, like, my parents wouldn't let me leave the house and, like,
Hmm.
how devastating that would be for me because when you're a teenager, those experiences of hanging out with your friends, making memories, like, these are my
Hmm.
teenage years, and I wanna just go like, hang out at the mall or wherever the frick,
Yes.
and when you can't go, you're like, "Oh, this really is the end for me. I'm really never gonna
Yes.
experience anything ever again, like, this is, like, a once in a lifetime thing that, like, I'm super missing out on making these memories with my friend group." You know what I mean? Like,
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
really felt her devastation, like, in that moment, and I think there's, like, a lot of instances of that in the show where it's, like, you zoom out and as an adult, you can be like, "Why are you crying?" Or
Yeah.
whatever, but in the
Yeah.
moment, you're like, "If I was a teenager, I would also be
I would
devastated," or
literally die.
yeah.
At that scene in my notes,
Mhm.
I wrote in all caps, I literally hate this because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like hate okay. There's something about the embarrassment and the humiliation of like being excited for something, like
Oh,
hanging out with
yeah.
your friends, and
Mm.
then finding out last minute that you're not able to go anymore, and then you have to like
Yeah.
explain to your friends why you can't go anymore. Like,
Yes, yeah.
oh my gosh, I
Mhm.
just feel
Man,
for her.
right? Like, I just felt that so hard. I almost feel like there's also a bit of an absurdist depiction of high school itself in this show,
Mm, mm-hmm.
and, throughout the show, especially in the beginning and stuff, like, there's this, like, perception of, like, Kaguya and Miyuki as, like, the head of student council as almost being like these like not like royalty, but like very revered. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like it's almost so exaggerated the way that they're like walking through the hall. I mean, you see this. This is a trope within itself, but like they're just like, oh my God, like
And all
the
the
president and
girls
the
and
vice
guys.
president, like we stand, like, wow, they're so cool.
Yeah,
And I
yeah, yeah.
I think
Us.
that's honestly like I see parallels with that in terms of, like, high school having, like, a popular crowd or
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah,
even just, like, in stan culture with, like, people just, like, have these personas, right, that they
yeah. Mm-hmm.
portray, I mean, these days, I guess, often online, but I don't know, people just, like, admire someone just for the image of who they are.
And in the spirit of the show taking things to the extreme, it's like,
Yeah.
if they weren't worshipped by the student body, I'd
Right.
be shocked.
I would be shocked, honestly.
You're trying to say
Yeah.
that they're not the kings and queens of the school?
But you know what's
What do
also
you mean?
what's also so funny though is like they take their jobs as student council like so
Yeah.
seriously. Like
Yeah,
again,
they
it's
take it
it's
so
ridiculous. Again, it's
seriously.
ridiculous. It's very hyperbolic.
And why did they get such a big
Yeah, they have
office?
like literally like Miyuki has a freaking it's like a
Desk.
desk. Like it looks like the desk in the White House or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's like an actual
Oh my goodness.
again,
Yes,
it's
fun.
absurd, but on purpose, I
It's
think.
fun.
It's
It's fun. I
actually
like
friggin'
it.
funny, yeah.
It's funny. Okay, great. Let's dive into the characters.
Yes. Let's do
So,
it.
Kaguya, as mentioned before, our characters are very well established, and there's not too much diving to do.
Mhm.
However, we do come to realize that she's a multifaceted character in
Mhm.
that she's got her main personality trait, which is she's super resourceful.
Mhm.
She can be cold-hearted, but we learn that she's also got a soft side to her, and that's kind of like the plot twist to her characterization.
Mhm.
And then also, her hubris. Ooh, I wanted
Ooh.
to use that word
She's
for
like,
like
"Oh yeah, whipping out
5 years
the."
since AP English,
Yeah.
and I've never gotten to use that word until now.
Yeah, I was like, she's whipping out that AP English
So
vocabulary.
humor me. Her hubris
Mhm.
being that she's like very stubborn to a fault, to the point where she gets in her own way.
Mhm.
And then later on in the series, when she is helping Ishigami study, for example, right?
Right, yeah.
So he won't fail his finals, and she
Mhm.
kind of stands up for him in the library in response to some girls in the library at the time who are kind of like spreading rumors about him and bad
Yeah.
mouthing him. And I like those moments because they demonstrate like a fortitude or like a steadfastness. I said in
Mhm.
my notes steadfastness because
Mhm.
it's almost like a healthier representation of this same stubbornness that she
Right.
has,
Yes.
in the way that she is able to like stand up for other people instead
Uh-huh.
of just standing up for herself.
Yeah, I really liked that. Well, first of all, I think one of the things that I liked about the dynamic of Kaguya and Miyuki is that I don't know, I find that with shoujo, not that I know that much about shoujo, but in general, I find that when it comes to these like romances, like it's usually with when it's specifically with the rich poor dynamic,
Oh, right.
it's often the guy that is rich and the girl is poor. So yeah, and I do like that in this show there's like a reversal of that where Kaguya is like the rich one and she's not like a mean rich person. Like
No.
it's just she's kind of reserved and doesn't
Mhm.
quickly open up to people and stuff like that, but she actually has a very kind heart and she doesn't care about things like status or wealth or anything like that, so she's
Mhm.
so quick to help Ishigami not fail his exams, and she's
Yeah.
really quick to help this random little girl like like walk her to school. There's actually I saw in my notes just now. I actually wrote down this lot. Do you remember she's okay, this is the skit. So Kaguya is she's excited to walk to school for the first time. She usually gets driven to school. But for
Yeah.
some reason that I can't remember, she has to walk to school or whatever.
Mhm.
So she's walking to school and she's excited because
Wait, sorry. The reason why she has to walk to school is because they find a cat in the car.
oh right, yeah. She planned this. She planned
Like,
this.
that is so
It's
absurd.
so freaking random. And also,
Okay,
like,
keep
if
going.
she's rich, wouldn't she have another car? Like, this is like their only car.
And it's like a limo. Like, the only
Yeah,
car they own is a
is
freaking
one
limo. Are
limo.
you kidding me? Okay, anyways.
Yeah. So she's planned this elaborate scheme to walk to school because she wants to like run into Miyuki on the which also is just so funny. Oh,
She's like mapping out his
yeah,
route to school.
exactly. So anyways, so she's excited and she wants to be able to catch him on his route. But then she sees this like little girl crying. She goes she goes up to the girl and she's like, "Briefly tell me what the problem is." And I actually had to pause and laugh because I was like, that's so funny. Because but I think it's also a great character moment because it's like she's clearly going out of her way to help this kid, but it's also
Mhm.
like in her personality to just be very blunt and straightforward and matter of fact. So yeah, I like that she has all these other character moments where you can clearly see her kindness and you can clearly see that she just doesn't care about wealth and status and stuff like that, which would make
Mhm.
sense that she really admires Miyuki for his determination, for how hardworking he is, because we've established that that's just the kind of person that she is and that she values those qualities more than anything else.
Okay, so let's move on to our male lead,
Miyuki.
Miyuki. Miyuki is. I thought it was interesting
Mhm.
that Kaguya's, I guess you could say, main fear, not really a fear, but her main concern is to get Miyuki to confess and, to like her back, whatever.
Yeah.
But Miyuki's main fear is to not be the focus of Kaguya's condescension. He has this like
Ah,
recurring
yes,
and like a
yeah.
nightmarish image of Kaguya like looking down on him, be like, "Oh, that's cute."
Yeah, like,
Like,
"You're so
yeah.
adorable." Yeah.
And I just think it's interesting that that is his main concern
Mhm,
instead of
mhm,
being oh, like I want her to like fawn over me or whatever,
mhm,
you
yeah.
know? It goes to show his like his like self-esteem issue because I think that he does have a
Yes.
problem with the keeping up of his image.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, like, I think the reason I like Miyuki so much is because, yeah, I think it's that element to his character that really makes sense for his character, because if you think about it,
Mhm.
he's the president of student council of this very prestigious academy, like,
Mhm.
private school, as in, like, rich, rich, rich people go to this school, and he's literally just, like, this,
Commoner.
he's this commoner, literally. He's literally just like your average person. That's basically,
Haruhi?
yeah, it's literally Oron, guys. No, I'm kidding. Um, so I like that idea of his character being explored in the context of like imposter syndrome almost, or like
Yeah.
being so obsessed with maintaining his image,
Mhm.
because for everyone else, like if you come from like a rich privileged background, you know, naturally you have other things that you can fall back on in life. But when
Right.
you're someone like him, it's like you do have to work twice as hard for everything, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think that this is very well represented in the volleyball skit in episode 5.
That's my favorite sketch.
It's actually my favorite skit. There's this one skit where Miyuki is trying to basically learn how to properly play volleyball because he's so bad at it. He's so bad at it. So he's like by himself trying to learn how to properly, hit the ball over the net and everything like that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he knows that the next unit that they're covering in PE in gym class is volleyball. So he's literally planning ahead because he doesn't want his classmates to see how bad he is at
Bad he
volleyball.
is. Yeah.
So he's so bad that like he has to like enlist Chica's help to basically like she has to like help him out with his volleyball. Anyways,
Yeah.
there's this like long elaborate like montage of like her like basically drill sergeant training him how to
Yeah.
like serve, and like he's so bad at it. And like by the end of the whole montage or whatever, we see that he's able to like really hold his own like in volleyball class or in gym class, and
Mhm.
the reaction by his peers is like, "Oh my god,
Oh my
Miyuki,
gosh, the
he's so
president is so
the
good at
president is
everything.
so good at everything." Like, of course he also knows how to play
I'm
volleyball.
dead.
And to me, I was like, this is so like relatable because I think like we work so hard sometimes to
Mhm.
just to like maintain a certain persona, right? Like
Mhm.
we I mean, I felt this all the time in university, was like imposter syndrome. I feel like the perception that I feel like a lot of my university friends have of me is that like I'm a hustler, I'm a grinder. Like I always hear those comments, and like they actually don't sit with me very well sometimes, because it's like
Mm.
I don't know, like sometimes it goes to show how much like you don't really see how much work someone puts in to get to where they are. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I think
Mhm.
like another example of that is like sometimes when I see writers who are like 20 years old and like already have like their debut novel out or something, people always say the first novel that you publish is definitely not the first novel you've written, because it
Mhm.
takes so much time and practice to get to that level of
Yeah.
skill. And so it's like, wow, I'm sitting here at, the ripe old age of 22, and like I haven't finished a manuscript. And there are people out there who are like 18 years old and they're like, "Yeah, I'm working on
Yeah.
like my 7th novel draft." And I'm just
Oh
like,
my gosh.
yeah, anyways, that was like my little rant. But I love Miyuki. I think that I just maybe even more than Kaguya, sometimes I like just really related to his
Mhm.
struggle.
Mhm. Okay, let's move on to Best Girl
That's what Chica.
Chica.
She's so funny. Oh my god, Chica.
Best Girl Chica. Okay, what to say about Chica? So, I think that from a character interaction point of view. You can really
Mhm.
see the student council room as this like its own contained environment where the main drama is playing out between Kaguya and Miyuki,
Yeah.
and Chika presents herself as this element of chaos, and
Oh
she
my
just
god.
she's just like thrown into the midst of this war, this
Yeah.
like battle between the two main characters, and she
Mhm.
just throws it into a riot. She's so unpredictable,
She's literally chaotic.
but at the same time, she's also kind of like a mysterious character in that
Mhm.
she comes across as very airheaded, optimistic, kind of shallow sometimes,
Yeah.
but there are like moments where we learn that she's actually very smart, she's
Mhm.
insightful, she's kind of manipulative,
It's
like
almost like in this weird way that she brings a certain like maturity to the
yeah,
conversation, which is so
yeah,
it's like so crazy because she's actually the most like chaotic character on the screen.
uh-huh,
I actually think that in terms of like that core quartet, those four main characters, like I think that there's a really good mix of personalities. And so Chika is kind of that character that often brings the levity or the lightheartedness
mm-hmm.
and the brightness to any given scene.
Mm-hmm. And also it's like conspiracy theories, like, is she doing all of this on purpose? Like, does she
Right,
actually
yeah.
know what's going on the whole time? And she's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, she is kind of
doing it
like
on purpose.
enigmatic in that way. But actually, I think another thing that I also like is that it's just like it's just great to have another main character girl on the screen who's not like a rival or anything like that. Like
Yeah.
she's never vying for Miyuki's affections. Like she's literally just like she's just Kaguya's friend and she's just a little chaotic
And
or
when
whatever.
she is seen as a rival, like in Kaguya's mind,
Yeah.
it's it's done to make fun of that trope, I feel.
Yeah, and it's
That's the
also
feeling that
I
I
think it's
get.
also done to show that, like, how ridiculous it is. Like, or just,
Yeah.
like, how much, like, Kaguya is, like, overthinking every little interaction, and so it's supposed
Yeah.
to feel, like, ridiculous.
Next,
Yeah.
best boy Yu Ishigami.
Ishigami is so oh my god.
So basically, okay, honestly, I was kind of confused slash a little bit skeptical about his character introduction first because I was really confused as to why his character was being introduced for the first time in episode 6, which
Right.
is literally midway through the season.
Yeah.
Now I'm of the opinion that this his inclusion was a stroke of genius. Still confused as to why he was introduced late, but I'm glad that they, better late than never. I'm glad that they introduced him in the end.
Mm,
Because I think that his character brings a lot to the table in terms
yeah.
of what he contributes to the main cast.
Yeah.
Um, First of all, it's nice to have a second male lead.
Mhm.
He's a male lead, but he's not a love interest. He serves as this great character foil for both Chika
Mhm.
in like personality,
Yeah.
because I think that they bring similar things to the table in terms of, being elements of chaos and of
Comedic
unpredictable.
relief.
Yeah,
Yeah.
comedic relief, unpredictability. But in terms of personality, he's a great character foil for her. And then
Yeah.
he's also a great foil for our two main characters, in that, as we said, he also brings this element of like naivete and like quote unquote denseness that's very comedic, in a
Yeah.
comedic way.
Mhm.
And honestly, I did feel like the main cast of three, the original three, already felt pretty cohesive by themselves. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't think that they needed another character, but I did feel like the inclusion of Ishigami's character made the vibes in the council room feel more family like, in
Right,
that
yeah. Like,
when
you
you
have, like,
get to
your weird
see
cousin.
uh-huh. And when you get to see like the four of them on screen at the same
Oh
time
my
in
god,
the same
yeah.
room together, it feels very familial, and
Yeah.
it feels really really nice. And I think that that writing of the family, that idea of family among friends or among a wayward squad is
Yeah.
very
Mhm.
it's done very well in anime in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like his character.
Me too, like, I think that he is just, like he's just one of the funniest characters, and, like, to have him enter at episode 6 is very interesting because, like, by episode 6, you're halfway through the season, and the viewer is comfortable with all of the characters that are on screen. We've kind of established the vibe, the routine, or whatever.
Hmm.
And then to have this like fourth character come in as a main character is just like really funny.
Yeah.
There was a there, towards the end, I think it's episode 10, there's like this moment where like Ishigami and Miyuki are talking and like he's kind of like giving his opinion on the situation or whatever.
Yeah.
And there are other moments in the show where this happens where I feel like Ishigami almost has like his outlook on a situation or like his opinions about women sometimes like they're like kind of outdated or they feel very stuck in like negative gender roles. So like even when he makes comments about like Chika's chest versus or maybe it's Kaguya's chest or something like that, like
Yeah.
um it's like oh my god, like Ishigami, that's so cringe. But I think like I like that it's supposed to be portrayed as intentionally immature.
And also the fact that he's not just some emo kid with like no emotions either. Like the
Oh
fact that
yeah,
he
no.
gets pretty passionate over things like anime and manga.
Yeah.
Or like when he was like, "Oh yeah, I just think that we should like tax couples on sports
Oh my
teams because it's
God,
like
yeah.
they don't deserve happiness because they already have a girlfriend."
Oh
I was
my
like, you
god.
know what? Sometimes I think that too.
That was literally me. Side note, that was literally me when I lived in Seoul, South
Yeah.
Korea.
Oh
I don't know
yeah.
if anyone
You
has
told me
been to
about
Seoul,
this.
South Korea, but like there are couples everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's a
Uh-huh.
couple. If you think you've
Who
seen
love PDA.
PDA, go to Korea. Go to Korea. You haven't seen PDA. So in the beginning, it used to like be like, oh, there's a couple. But then
Yeah.
like it's like 60 days later, and I'm like, I hate that couple simply for existing.
Okay, anyways.
Anyways.
Let's talk about I guess the plot towards the end.
Right,
So
because there's
the
plot.
bed situation.
Oh god, yeah.
So, I liked this situation actually. I think that it presents two sides that are just not well communicated. And
Yes.
I can see from both sides actually why both sides would feel like this is an unfair, unjust situation. They get the characters to ask other people for advice this time
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
this whole like idea of them always being the ones to give advice because people see them as this like the heights of relationship success. So it's just nice character growth, actually, to see them be able to ask and
Yeah.
confide in other people. And the editing of that segment is structured in a very interesting way, where it's like,
Mhm.
even though the guys and the girls are in separate places at, I assume, separate times, there's like this back and forth to it, where
Yeah.
it seems like they're talking and debating directly with each other, even though they're apart, because they both have valid and reasonable voices and opinions to bring up.
Yeah.
What did you think about it?
I thought it was again, what I found really interesting about this is that they both extrapolate things from the situation without
Yeah.
directly talking to each other. And then so when they go and seek out advice from their friends or whatever, it's like they're telling their whoever they're talking to, like so I think like Miyuki's talking to Ishigami and Kaguya's talking to some girl. Um and they're both like telling their side of the story, but also on both sides they don't completely have all of the
The full
information.
story.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like misinformation happening, which I think is like so true when you're like when you're in an advice session with a friend and you're just telling your side of the story and they're like, "Oh my god, yeah, like wow, like I totally see where you're coming from," because it's like they
Yeah.
don't have all of the information in any given like situation. Um but what I thought was interesting there was like in Kaguya's mind, she's upset that Miyuki allowed himself to be pulled in bed. And then in
As we
Miyuki's
learn.
mind, it's like, why is Kaguya upset? I literally didn't touch her. Like I didn't do anything. And like that's what anyone is supposed to do when they're
Uh-huh.
in bed with someone, right? And then on the flip side though, there's this like deeper element of Kaguya being like,
Yeah.
but why didn't he touch her?
I literally.
Yeah.
Okay, that moment when it was revealed that
Yeah.
the reason why she was upset was
Mhm.
because he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And to her,
Well,
that
it was
was
both
like,
of those things, though. Like, she was
yes,
upset that he got into the bed, but then she's also upset that he got
yes,
into the bed and then didn't do anything because it's like, he doesn't
yes.
like,
I
which
was
is
like
like the
blown away because this is the kind of underlying thought I feel like that people have, but they never want to voice it because it's like, you know, people don't want to come across as like thirsty, I guess, or like
Yeah.
desperate
And then there's
or
also like,
whatever.
it's also like, do you really want that to happen in a situation where you're not explicitly giving consent? So like, there's a
Yes.
lot of, yeah, it's a very layered situation, but I completely
Uh-huh.
understand where she was coming from.
But it was a very well written climax.
Yeah.
For a show that hinges itself on accurately and also comedically but meaningfully portraying emotions that come in a relationship and like
Hmm.
just the conflicts and the miscommunication, I think that this was a very good climactic scene to have.
Yeah, and
So
I think what I liked about kind of, we get to see the aftermath of the situation, right?
yeah.
And you sort of see them like are like not arguing, but there's a weird tension between them
Yeah.
because there's something that has happened that they just like haven't talked about, that they haven't addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of see how that snowballs into I think like the episode opens up and they're like arguing over a piece of cake or something like that.
That was so
Yeah,
cute.
and it's just like the smallest thing. And I think that's very true in the way that like when we don't like communicate, we
Mm.
often like create these, I don't know, like these like wrong assumptions or like perceptions
Mm-hmm.
in our head of a given situation just because we don't talk it out.
And isn't
Um
that what teenagers do too?
oh,
It's like
$100%.
something
Yeah.
happens, and then it's like nobody wants to talk about it.
Oh,
And so there's just this
yeah.
tension in the air, and it's like always on the back of your
Exactly. And
mind.
I think another thing that happens a lot is that like you hear things through your friends. So for example,
Yeah.
like there's a moment like I think after the bed situation is happening while they're still in the middle of their fight or whatever, where Chica or someone is like, "Oh, like I think she got sick cuz she was standing out in the rain waiting for someone."
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
like for Miyuki that actually reframes a lot of things in his mind cuz it was like, "Oh, did she get sick like waiting for me?" And so it's
Uh-huh.
like he kind of like for him that kind of like softens the situation a bit for him, and it's not even a direct conversation that they have to each other. It's just like something they hear through their friend or like yeah. It's just like
Mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm.
a surprisingly layered show.
Uh-huh. Okay, and then we'll talk about the finale. Just before we talk about the actual finale with like the
Yeah.
fireworks and stuff, I just want to talk about this whole narrative of two people really, really wanting to see each other and talk to each other
Yeah.
and just barely missing each other. And there's
Yeah.
something about this
Kimi no Nawa? Did
narrative.
someone say Kimi no Nawa?
Shut
Did
up.
someone say Kimi no Nawa was my favorite movie?
Listen. There's something about this narrative of two people just barely missing each other that gets to me, and I don't know why.
Right.
And so they both go through this entire summer being like, oh, I want to see him and I want to see her. So they go
Mhm.
to the student council room in the summer.
Mm.
That moment got me emotional. Like the way that
Yeah.
the editors would like frame the two of them making their way at the same time to the council room as if they were going to see each
Yeah.
other. And they arrive and the room is empty because they just missed each other.
Yeah.
It's like when two people are so close. You are so close to being together.
Right.
If you would just say something
Mm.
or do something, and it's like my heart.
I know. I think it's like, yeah, that moment really got to me too. I think because it's like that element of they want it so much, we want it so much,
Yeah.
and the solution to it feels so simple if they would just text each other to hang out, but you know that they won't. And they know that they won't because they people just don't want to be honest about their feelings, right? Like it's so
Yeah.
scary to admit that you have feelings for someone. Like what? Admitting that you want to like hang out with the person you like? Like what?
I
Crazy.
could never.
I can never do that. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about the finale, the fireworks finale?
This finale scene actually happens in Kaguya's point of view, right? So we see her trying, like, basically escaping her house. And we see her, like, running to try to reach the fireworks, and then she, like, bumps into Miyuki, and Miyuki has, like, when he realizes that Kaguya can't come, just, like, drops everything to go and find her and make sure
Yeah.
that she goes and sees the fireworks. And which is just, like, the most anime thing you've ever heard. Isn't that the most anime sentence I've ever said on the anime podcast?
He drops everything.
He drops everything to make sure she goes to see the fireworks. Like, okay, calm down. When we're seeing it in her POV, it feels like this huge, like, romantic gesture moment. It feels very chivalrous. It's very cathartic. Like, my heart was pounding.
Yep.
I was almost crying. Like, it was that level of, like, emotional intensity where I was hooked. And, like, the squad piles into a taxi, and they're like, step on it. We gotta go see the fireworks. It's not over yet. And then there's just, like, this beautiful scene of them on this bridge, and then the fireworks are, like, in the sky. And then I literally wrote in my notes, like, this shot of Kaguya looking at
Oh
Miyuki
my
is
gosh.
so pretty.
I can't.
It's very pretty.
I can't.
And
I love it.
yeah, so I really love that. I really love that scene. And I really like that this is kind of the first moment in the show finally where we see that they're both being vulnerable to each other. And then that the scene passes, right? And we like cut to the next day, or like we cut to the start of the new semester, and then we finally cut to Miyuki's point of view, and he's thinking back on the exact same scene, and he's like cringing so hard. He's like, why did I say that? Like, and he's like cringing at, like, the dramatic words that he used or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just found that it was so hilarious the way that, like, you just switch, like, point of view, and immediately the whole situation is reframed from a drama to a comedy. Like, it was so clever. It was so clever. It was so like satisfying.
Going back to the whole dramatic scene of her trying to escape her house and stuff.
Yeah.
Just diving into, like, symbolism or, like, motifs a little bit. I think that I actually think that the writers intentionally try to make being in a car versus going on foot, like, that, the contrast between those two methods of transportation, they try to, like, use that to say something, because the whole idea of her having been stuck in traffic on her way to see the fireworks, and then her being kind of like, screw it, and then leaving the car. It's kind of like she finally learns to take matters into her own hands.
Right, yeah.
And despite taking the longer way there, because sometimes I feel like, sometimes you're taking a vehicle and you're just confined in this way of life that you think is just the only way there is. And it might be, the faster way, or it might be the more comfortable way. But sometimes I think that when you find that you've hit a point in your life where that way or that method of transportation of getting to your destination doesn't work for you anymore, you kind of have to take things into your own hands, leave that, and just go on foot, even if that means, it's going to be harder, or it's going to be a longer path. But it's about how you get there,
Right, exactly.
And then there's this other moment when she's almost there, and she has this line. She says, all summer, the only thing I've been thinking about is how happy I would be if I got to gaze at those beautiful fireworks together with my favorite people, and how wonderful it would be. God, so she, like, brings up this plea to God. This summer, I don't need love. I don't need romance. At least let me be together with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, I guess in the end, it's like Kaguya's character development, it doesn't accumulate in the realization that she, like, I don't know, like, she ends up with Miyuki or whatever.
Right, yeah.
It culminates in this realization that there's nothing better than just being with the people that you love.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
there's nothing better than that. And I think that, for me, that's the climactic moment of the entire series. Her coming to realize that, like, I'm putting up these walls and I'm letting my pride get in the way for what? Like, I'm not getting anything that I want. The only thing that I want is to just be with those who I love. Not even just, like, Miyuki. Like, Miyuki plays a huge role in her motivations and in her desires and in her life. but she wants to be with Chika, her best friend. She
Yeah.
wants to be with Ishigami, who she's like stands up for, who she cares so much about. And it's like, that's what there is to live for. And I think that I resonate with that a lot too, because, I feel like people really get caught up with like the ideal relationship.
Oh my God,
But it's
yeah.
like, I don't know, I'm of the opinion where it's like, I just want to be with the people who I love and who I care for. I don't care if it's like in a romantic way or in like if I like care about them, then
Yeah.
I want to be around them. That's and period. Like,
And that's
the end of that.
Yeah, the end.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I really like that moment.
Me too. And I
in
think
the
that
finale.
what might be a common theme for me when it comes to stories that are like quote unquote romances is like, of course, like you want a good romance narrative. You want to be able to
Mm-hmm.
root for the characters. But what I've found in all of the romance stories that I like is that what's more important almost is like the like almost the people that are around those main characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's like because even with when we were talking about Oron, like the reason that like I actually enjoyed Oron, like what I was saying was that it actually turned out to be way less romance focused.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out to be more of an exploration of like friendship and like love in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that that's the same thing with this show is that like it doesn't just have a like heart throbbing romance at the center of it.
Mm-hmm.
It really does feel like this ensemble cast, this like little family where like everyone feels like everyone feels important, right? Like
Yeah.
the dynamic as a whole feels important where everyone is affecting each other in very significant and
Mm-hmm.
meaningful ways. And I mean, I'm always saying like we need to have more stories that like uplift stories of friendship and
Mm-hmm.
like that aren't so romance driven cuz like yeah, I resonate with those stories sometimes like way more than like romance itself,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just me.
And honestly, no, the romance driven plots are interesting.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I can see the appeal. I think that the inclusion, as you said, the inclusion of this uplifting of friendship and like relationships in general is it makes it seem so much more meaningful.
Yes, that's what it is.
Which makes it, so much more appealing to other audiences who are looking for maybe a little bit more than just the romance aspect.
Exactly. So, for our next segment, we will be doing the Bechdel test. If you're unfamiliar with the Bechdel test, this is a test that was devised by a cartoonist named Alison Bechdel that is basically used as a measure of female representation in media. So, the test is comprised of 3 questions. Number 1, are there at least 2 named female characters? Number 2, do they speak to each other? And number 3, do they speak to each other about something other than a male love interest? So
Ding, 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 ding.
it passes. This is so exciting.
Like it does pass.
Yeah, I always get so excited when like we do the test and it passes.
Let's talk a little bit about the female characters.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about Kaguya, Chika. So I don't have too much to say about them, just aside from the fact that it's like, they're one of them is the titular character, so like I would be really upset if we didn't have a lot to say about Kaguya, which we did, which I'm glad. And then Chika, best girl. I have no complaints about these 2 characters. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think they definitely pass. I like that they're best friends and like that's kind of it. They don't ever like they're not rivals. They don't really talk about relationships that much. Which is just so refreshing. It's just really refreshing to have like 2 girls on screen that just like hype each other up. Like they're like yeah, it's just like they're never like bringing each other down. And I would say that with Hayasaka too. Like Hayasaka's always like, I mean, she's Kaguya's maid, but she's also like I almost feel like she's a like family to her. And just like the way that she like really goes out of her way to, almost be a voice of reason to Kaguya sometimes when she's like caught up in her feelings and everything.
I think that, okay, Honestly, I have no real complaints about the writing of the female characters.
Yeah.
I think that it's okay that Hayasaka doesn't get too much character depth because she doesn't play that big of a role in this
Right,
story.
yeah.
So I think it's fine. Chika and Kaguya, honestly, like I'm happy with their character writing.
Mhm.
I think the only gripe that I can think of, maybe it's a small one, is that the girls feel very cookie cutter. As
Right,
in,
yeah.
Kaguya is supposed to be your super intellectual, resourceful main character, protagonist, female character,
Mhm.
and Chika is supposed to be your, preppy, optimistic, outgoing sunshine girl.
Yeah.
And Hayasaka is supposed to be the cool, calm, collected one. So
Yeah.
it's they very much do incorporate their own like archetypes and tropes that
Right.
they're trying to convey.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I say that it's a minor gripe, it's a minor complaint, because
Mhm.
I do think that the purpose of the characters in this series is that you're trying to get people to relate to them on a
Exactly.
basic level,
Yeah.
and you're not focused on making complex and layered characters. So
Yeah.
that, it's fine. But obviously, like, it would still be nice to have complex layered characters as layered as
Right.
Kaguya.
Yeah.
But you know what? They serve their purpose, so it's like, whatever. I'm happy.
I agree. Yeah. Like, I think that I always say, like, it's totally fine for stories to use cliches as long as they don't feel like super shallow or contrived or anything. So yeah, I'm like, I did not go into this show like expecting or needing like breaking like narrative ground here with character writing. So yeah, I'm happy with where they're at.
I think they broke ground, honestly, with the comedy. Like, I
Oh my
think
god,
that
yeah.
there
Yeah.
is one to make a show extraordinary.
Mhm.
There should be one aspect that it absolutely excels in, and I just think that for this show, it's the comedy, not the character writing.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think the way that I view any like storytelling these days is like when I'm deciding like how I want to rate it or like how I feel about it is like what did the writer set out to do? What did they set out to say? What genre are they?
How well did they do
exactly?
it?
And what genre are they trying to work with? And like, it's not a character drama; it's like a rom-com. So I think it 100% excels in that regard.
Shall we go on to the next segment?
the next It's always
because I'm so nervous.
Go to the next segment.
I hate that.
No, why did your voice like vibrate?
Because
it was like your body was like rejecting it.
Listen, I'm so nervous about this segment every
Why?
single
Oh,
time.
every single time, yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, now it's time for dumpster fire.
Oh hell yeah.
So dumpster fire is when we can just say whatever we want.
Yeah.
Anything that wasn't said before. I don't even have like a scripted introduction to the segment. I literally just say whatever.
I don't think we ever script our intro or transition to dumpster fire.
Absurd or hashtag relatable.
We created this specifically for this episode. I'm so excited.
We've come to realize that a lot of these I guess like scenarios and sketches that they cover in Love is War is very relatable, but also sometimes it's kind of just like ridiculous.
So ridiculous.
We're going to go through a list of some of them.
Yes.
And we're going to just kind of admit ourselves, if we find that particular scenario absurd or hashtag relatable.
Oh my god, yes.
So I guess I'll start with the first one.
Okay, yeah.
On our list. Okay, the first one is asking for each other's line ID / number. So the whole situation is Miyuki gets this new phone and Kaguya is kind of just like waiting for him to ask her for her number.
My god, yeah.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Relatable. I love that. Okay, the reason that I said relatable is not because I've actually been in this situation, but more because if, I don't know, I just, like, I could totally see myself doing that, you know? Like, I could totally see myself being, like, not wanting to ask for someone's contact info or ask for their Instagram or something. And this is for, like, meeting new friends, too. Because, like, you don't want to seem too eager. Or, like, you don't know if the other person, like, is on the same wavelength as you.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
So like,
yeah.
that's why I think it's relatable, because I don't think I've actually ever been in a situation where I have asked for someone's social media
Mhm.
or phone number or whatever first.
The reason why I said absurd, I do understand the sentiment, and I feel like I find the sentiment relatable.
Yeah.
I'm like more comfortable actually over text than I am talking on the phone sometimes
Right, right,
actually.
right.
So I like prioritize getting somebody's contact number or whatever.
Mm.
So, and in my mind it's just like, if I'm not going to ask for it, or if I'm not going to put myself in a situation where it's easy for me to get it or whatever,
Mm.
then I'm never gonna talk to this person again.
Yeah, that's true.
So for me, it was, I said absurd because I think that in that situation, I don't know, I'm just the type to be like, oh, give me your number.
Right.
Like,
It's like not a
yeah,
big
like I
deal.
want to stay in
Yeah. I
contact,
think that's
you know?
honestly like at the end of the day, that's like you being an extrovert and me being an introvert. Like,
You know what? I think so too.
yeah, it's just like we see two different
Yeah.
sides of the same situation. But yeah, I agree with you.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. All right, next one. Being close to your crush's close circle.
That's a good way to word it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically in the episode, it's like Kaguya. Wow, I was gonna say Kageyama. Holy crap! My brain just like, what anime are we doing?
It just your brain just like reset to its like default state. And it was just like it was like
Dumpster
buffering.
fire?
It was like buffering like a computer. And it was like, oh, reset, Kaguya-sama.
Anyways, in the episode,
Yes.
Kaguya is like, oh, like I'm gonna get really close to Miyuki's sister so that we can like hang out all the time, and like I can get close to his family.
Yeah. Okay, ready?
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Relatable.
You go first.
Okay. Kaguya spends this whole like, half the skit basically trying to get close to his little sister. And she's like running through all of these like situations that like they could become close. And then like Chika just walks in and is like, oh hey, like hey Kay. and then Kaguya just gets like really jealous because like Chika's already friends with her, right? And then Kaguya starts like sulking because she's like jealous of like the way that they're like already friends. And she's like, Chika, like, oh my god, like, ugh, like what a traitor, like I hate her for this. And then like 2 seconds later Chica's just like, oh, do you want to hang out with us? And Kaguya's like, yes.
Yeah.
And that to me was like super relatable.
I don't even know why this thing is relatable, because if you think about it, it's like, I don't know, like I don't see the immediate advantage of getting close to the inner circle of your crush. I mean, I see some advantage, but it's not like you're getting, like, just because you're getting close to his sister doesn't mean, I don't know.
Right, yeah. Again, it's like,
but we do it anyway. It's
right.
like you grasp at any chance to be close to this person.
Exactly. Like I think it's like that situation of like, I don't know, like you know that this person is close with your crush or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you just want to have like another thing in common with them.
Yes. Maybe,
you want to have that like mutual connection.
Yep,
yeah.
Yep.
Oh my god, are you ready for the next one? So the next one is the umbrella skit, guys. Oh my god. So basically this is a skit that happens where it's raining and Kaguya's like looking out the window and she's seeing all these couples sharing an umbrella. And that's a trope, right? Sharing an umbrella with your crush or whatever.
Yep.
It's kind of like a status symbol when you're like sharing an umbrella with someone, right? Both of them actually, both Kaguya and Miyuki know that it's raining and they want the other person to offer their umbrella, right? And basically they get outside, they're standing outside, they're looking at the rain, and at the same time they're like, oh, I forgot my umbrella. But they say it at the same time. And so then now they're like stuck in this situation. So 3, 2, 1. Absurd. Yeah. Okay, why don't you start this one off?
Absurd because I think it's just because I can't wrap my head around the umbrella thing being a status symbol, because
Mm.
they kind of go into the during the episode they kind of go into the idea of like people seeing the two of you being under the same umbrella and then being like, oh, that must mean that they're together.
Right. Maybe this is more of an
And
Asian thing.
maybe, and for me personally, it's like if I
Be
see two people
practical.
under an umbrella, it's like it's because they both don't want to be in the rain. Like that makes no sense to me.
I actually am a little bit on the other side where I do understand like the trope of it
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
maybe it is more of an Asian thing.
Mm.
Because I mean, I don't know. I saw so many couples sharing an umbrella when I lived in Korea. Like, guys, it's an umbrella. Be
Yeah,
practical.
yeah. I know, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, the next thing is following each other on social media. Now, when I say following, I don't just mean like the formal following, I mean like following, like stalking each other on social media. Okay?
Mm.
Ready?
Okay, fine. Yeah, go.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Relatable.
Relatable. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, there are definitely moments where it's like, yeah, when you're like interested in someone, you're kind of like, I don't know, the social media is like the window to the soul. So like
Mm.
you do kind of look at their stories all the time. You do kind of see like what they're doing on the weekend all the time. And it's like you kind
Yeah.
of can't help but check, right? Like even if you don't really want
Mm-hmm.
to.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never obsessively stalked, but I've definitely like checked someone's profile so much that they get like pushed to the top of my like Instagram timeline all the time. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
feel that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that.
Me too. The thing about social media is that I think people do expect to be stalked, which is why
Yes.
you like
Yeah.
accumulate like a
You
feed, a
curate
certain
it.
aesthetic,
Hmm.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. Um, so you can really try, like, you can really glean a lot from looking at somebody's social media.
Yeah.
And I think that the whole idea of like quote unquote stalking is like you just want to know what's going on in that person's head and what is going on with that person,
Yeah.
but you
Hmm.
are hindered by, like, just in the case of Kaguya and Miyuki, by pride. It's
Yeah.
like you don't want to ask. You don't want to ask to be like, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" Even though you want to know, because I think that like, "Hey, what you do in text is like
There's so much
that's
meaning attributed to
yeah.
that text.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
don't want to like say it, but you like want to know what's up with them because you care about
Exactly.
them.
Yeah. Okay, next one. Wondering if you should be complimenting someone.
Mhm.
3, 2, 1. Relatable.
Absurd. Okay. I guess
Uh,
I'll go
I just
first.
find this show very relatable, I guess.
Maybe it does come back to the thing of me being an extrovert and you
Yeah,
being an
probably.
introvert. But I just think that if I have an opportunity to make somebody's day
Mm,
and like make
mhm.
them feel better about something, like if you just, I don't know, like if you got something done physically,
Yeah,
it's like good for you. Like, and if it looks good, I'll say like I think that looks great, right?
yeah.
If I just so happen to have feelings for that person, that's my
Then
own
so be
fault.
it. Yeah, exactly.
But like if it genuinely is like nice, then like why not just say something, right?
Right. I get that. And I think in the context of the show, it's definitely absurd. I think the way that I was looking at
Mhm.
it was more like, man, I do get like caught up sometimes about like if I'm not super close with someone, like how comfortable I would be like making it known that like, oh, I noticed this thing about you. Obviously,
Right,
if it's like
right.
a physical thing, like very obvious, like a haircut or something like
Mhm.
that, then
Mhm.
maybe yeah. But again, like I'm just more of an introverted person. So I do
Right.
like I think a lot before I say something to someone that
Uh-huh,
I'm not
uh-huh.
like very close to.
Okay,
Um
fair. Um Lying about knowing how to do something.
oh, how to do something in general?
Okay. Yeah, so
Okay.
the situation from the episode was Miyuki lying about knowing how to speak French. Okay, absurd or relatable. Lying about knowing how to do something or a skill or something, okay?
Mhm.
3, 2, 1.
Absurd.
Absurd.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
I was on the fence about this.
nice.
The reason that I do think it's absurd is because I don't think I've ever lied to the point where I've been like backed into a corner about things. Like I've actually never found myself in a
Mm.
situation where I've pretended to even be like interested or knowledgeable about a thing that I wasn't. I don't know why.
Same.
Like, I think it's more like I don't want to ever be in a situation where I have to like pretend, because I like don't want that to like bite me in the butt later. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's so much more embarrassing
Exactly.
for the other person to realize that you're not actually into
Yeah.
that, or you're not actually good at that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'd rather just not.
Yeah. And I think that like sometimes I just like tend to focus more on like what you do have in common with someone, or like what you can do well. So the next one is psychology test and relationship advice. So wanting to know what they think about love. So, okay, if that's confusing, I guess this, for context, in the show, this is like there's like a scene where the squad is like taking some kind of like online quiz. 3, 2, 1. Relatable.
Okay. Relatable because
Yeah.
for me, it goes back to the social media thing where it's like, I want to know what they're thinking. But this one is like kind of the next level because it's like, I want to know what they're thinking in terms of like love.
Yeah.
And then in your mind, you're like, are we going to be compatible?
Exactly,
Whatever, stuff like that.
I really like the Myers-Briggs personality test. Like, you know how some people are super into horoscopes? I'm like super into the Myers-Briggs. To the point where like I like guessing people's Myers-Briggs. Like, yeah,
that's fun.
like their letters. So yeah, like I'm like all about like what's your, have you ever done the Myers-Briggs test? Like, what are you? Like, is that compatible?
Wait, do you know what I am?
You are you an ENFP?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You have like strong ENFP energy.
I
Mm-hmm.
N T T F F.
I won't say it.
INFP.
That's a good guess.
INF.
INFJ.
INFJ.
I'm an INFJ.
Oh,
yeah.
That's the last two.
I don't know. I just like relate to that. I like personality quizzes. I love an algorithm telling me who I am, so I don't have to figure it out for myself. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
Last one. The whole phrase, I'm not dating because I don't want to be dating.
I want to be single. Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Relatable.
I knew this was gonna be relatable for the two of us. Well, why don't you go first?
Okay. Well, honestly, when I say it, I kind of mean it. I think that there are maybe moments when I was younger, I had moments where I was like, is something wrong with me that I'm like not in a relationship and that I don't actively pursue one? Because I don't know about you, but I have been put on the spot on multiple occasions in friend groups, amongst family. Like, they're just like, you know, like people ask like invasive questions like that, right? Because it's like it's common talk with like people that you're semi close to, right? And it's just like, oh, like you're not in a relationship? Oh, why? Oh, like you don't want to be in one? Like, why? It's just like, and then you will give the most basic answer, and it's just like, oh, I just like not actively looking for one, not opposed to one. That's just like where I'm at in life. And they're like, oh, but like it's like this is the time to be doing that stuff. It's like, I don't know. I also though relate to like using the phrase as like a defense mechanism. Like, I relate to both, I guess. So yeah.
For me, I think it's like, I don't like the idea of not being in a relationship because of a particular reason. Like, I'm open to it, but also it's like, I'm not gonna force myself into one. I'm not gonna pursue one just because I feel like that's the missing piece of my life or whatever. You know? So I don't like the idea of not being in a relationship and having there be like a definitive causal reason for that.
Exactly.
Like, because I'm not looking. Like, I don't want to be in one. Like, just because I'm not in one doesn't mean I don't want to be in one. Right? It just means that maybe it's not the right time, it's not the right person, blah, 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 it's not the right circumstances.
And I also think that, like, I feel a lot of things when it comes to the expectation that at this age you should be at a certain you should have had a certain amount of life experiences, like as if like life is a video game, and like at this point in the game, you should have already done all these
Yeah,
dungeons. Like, you know what
I
I mean?
agree.
Like, I don't know. I feel that way about a lot of things where it's like the amount of people that have gotten engaged during quarantine that I know, it's a lot. And so
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just like sometimes you're in social situations. I feel like super weird about like people being like all up in your business, like as if there needs to
Mm.
be a reason, right? Like, what if I'm just like
Mhm.
living my
Mhm.
life, you know?
Leave me
Leave me
alone.
alone. I'm
Yep,
happy.
yep.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end.
That was a very like, I think that's the most cohesive, articulate we've ever been during dumpster fire. Usually we're just like
But that was
usually
fun.
we're just like screaming about like dumb stuff.
Let's go on to our ratings.
I'm gonna give this show a 4 out of 5 volleyballs.
Ooh.
I chose I chose volleyballs because the volleyball skit is like my favorite skit, and I think it was like it happened in like early on in the show, and that's kind of when I realized that I was really gonna like it.
Mhm.
And it's just like Chika has like her funniest line in the season when she's like when she sees like how well Miyuki is actually playing now, and she like turns like a zombie to Kagen and is like, I raised that boy. And I was like, that is so
Literally
on brand for
the
us.
funniest
It's her
line of
best
this
line in the
whole
show,
show.
in the season. Yeah, she was like proud mom energy, and I'm like, that's me, that's us. We're always like
Oh my
adopting characters.
gosh.
And then I chose 4 out of 5. I really wrestled with this because I was like, oh, do I want to like bump it up? Like, is it a four and a
Mhm.
half? Because it was like I liked it
Yeah.
so much. The only reason I'm gonna give it a solid 4 is because I think personally, I I really like resonate with shows like that are very character driven.
Mhm.
And this is just not a character driven show. And that's
Mhm.
okay. It's still a really great show to the point where I actually had basically zero bad things to say about it.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
yeah, I think it's like a solid 4. Like it's really good. I would practically recommend it to anyone. It's
Mhm.
funny, it is lighthearted, it's so refreshing, and it's just some of the best depictions of teenagers I've ever seen.
Uh-huh.
And it's a very surprisingly layered show, but it doesn't
Mm.
have deep characters. So that's why it's a 4.
I'm also gonna give a 4 out of 5
Yes.
cat ears.
Oh my god, yeah.
And for anyone who's seen the show, they will know that cat ears, they're basically the fifth character of the
Oh my
of the
god,
show.
yeah.
4 out of 5. You know what? A lot of the same reasons you brought up. I do think that for what it set out to do, we say this a lot.
Yeah.
You know, like we really,
Mm,
and I think it's good because it's like a show might not be up to somebody's tastes,
exactly.
but if it accomplished what it set out to do, then that's a success,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
in our books.
Mhm.
So for the 4, because it does what it sets out to do and it does it extremely
So
well. Like
well.
we were laughing
Yeah.
out loud, and I don't think we laughed this much for any other anime that we've covered before,
Yeah.
at least on this podcast.
Yeah.
So it was so funny, it was so enjoyable and lighthearted. But there
Mhm.
was no point where we were like, this is groundbreakingly new, this
Yeah.
is so, you know, never before seen.
Yeah.
um and I think that is what warrants a 5. But
Mhm.
it's a really good show, and I also am just not giving it a 4.5 because I do think that we have to be, you know, we're trying to be a little strict with our ratings, I
Yeah,
feel.
I mean, I think for me it's more like anything more than a 4 is like it really
Yeah.
personally spoke to my soul on some level.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes, I
again, like
agree.
that's just like ratings are so subjective, right? Like
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
like not everything that I consume has to speak to my soul, right? Like it's like
Definitely.
I can give something a 2 or a 3 and still have really loved it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. I agree.
Mhm.
And I think that if we were like huge comedy fans,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I love funny stuff,
I love
but like,
laughing.
I'm not like, you know, I'm not well versed in comedy. Comedy isn't the first thing I reach for when I'm like trying to decide what to watch.
Mhm.
And so, because of that, I don't know a lot about it. And
Mhm.
so to me, it's like, anything is funny. I have low standards,
I have low standards
for humor. But still, I really had a good time watching this.
Yes.
I would also recommend it to anybody. And I just went away with this show with good vibes.
Such good vibes. Yeah.
So, thank you everybody for making it this far into our episode. We know it wasn't easy, but nonetheless, please subscribe and follow us. Find us wherever you get your podcasts, be that Spotify, Apple, Google, YouTube. We're also on Twitter at Into the Workshop.
Yeah.
And that wraps up this episode. We'll see you guys for a special episode next time.
Very special.
Bye.
Bye.